There is a truth so deep, so powerful, that it was hidden from you. A truth that, once you understand it, holds the power to break every invisible chain keeping you trapped in a limited reality. A truth that changes absolutely everything about who you are, about how the universe works, and about how your life manifests. What you perceive as reality, what you touch, see, feel, what you call the physical world, is not solid. It never was. The entire universe, at its deepest core, is not made of matter. It is made of vibration, of energy, of consciousness. And there is something science discovered, not as some distant theory, not as lab talk, but as confirmation of one of the oldest spiritual laws of humanity, a law whispered by masters over millennia, hidden from the eyes of most, and now confirmed by physics itself. The universe responds to the observer. Yes, what you call reality only exists when you look. And more than that, what you observe becomes real. And if that sounds impossible to believe, prepare yourself. Because today I'm going to show you the proof. A proof so shocking it shook the foundations of science, of logic, of everything we thought was real. An experiment that changed everything forever and reveals undeniably that your mind controls reality. The experiment that destroyed everything we believed. Imagine for a moment that everything you've ever believed about the solid, physical, tangible world might be nothing more than a sensory illusion. Imagine that what you call reality, the things, the objects, the ground beneath your feet, even your own body, is actually not as solid as it seems. Now hold on to that idea, because it's not just some philosophical hypothesis. It was proven shockingly clearly by one of the most important and mysterious experiments in modern science, the double-slit experiment. To understand what this experiment reveals, picture a wall with two small slits side by side. In front of that wall, there's a device that fires subatomic particles, like electrons or photons, one at a time. Behind the wall is a screen that records where each particle lands. At first, scientists believed the particles would behave like little solid balls. So naturally, they expected that the particles would pass through one slit or the other, forming two vertical lines on the screen, exactly matching the slits. Logical, predictable. But what happened was absolutely mind-blowing. When no one observed the path of the particles, something strange happened. The particles didn't act like little balls. They behaved like waves. Waves that spread out, split, and interfered with one another, creating what's called an interference pattern on the screen. A pattern typical of waves, not particles. This meant that somehow, each particle wasn't just going through one slit, it went through both, and neither, and all possible paths at the same time. In that state, the particle wasn't a thing, it was a possibility. It existed as a wave of probabilities, spread out in the quantum field, able to be here, there, or anywhere, until it was measured. So the scientists thought, let's observe what's happening. They installed sensors at the slits to detect exactly which slit each particle passed through. And that's when the universe revealed one of its most disturbing secrets. The moment observation was introduced, the entire pattern changed. The particles, which before behaved like waves, suddenly acted like solid particles. The interference pattern disappeared. No more wave behavior. Now there were simply two lines, just like tiny balls going through one slit or the other. Astonishingly, the mere presence of observation, of consciousness, collapsed the wave of possibilities into a single, fixed reality. Matter stopped being a diffuse vibration in the quantum field and became a solid point in space. The question that echoed through the scientific world was, how can the mere act of observing change the behavior of reality itself? This experiment revealed something so unsettling that physicists still debate it to this day, trying to explain, rationalize, or find loopholes. But there is no escaping this undeniable fact. At the most fundamental level of existence, reality is not a solid structure independent of us. It is not just out there, waiting to be discovered. It only exists when someone observes it. Matter only manifests when consciousness interacts with it. Until then, everything remains as pure potential, as vibration, as an invisible field where anything can be, but nothing is, until someone looks. And no, this is not a metaphor. This is not some esoteric concept. This is physics, quantum physics. And this simple yet overwhelmingly powerful experiment shattered the old mechanistic view that the world is a fixed, predictable place independent of consciousness. Reality, it turns out, is not something external, cold, and separate from the observer. On the contrary, it is deeply entangled with consciousness. And this isn't just a scientific discovery. It's a confirmation of what spiritual traditions have been saying for thousands of years. The mind shapes reality. The real question now, the one very few are ready to face, is this. If reality only exists when you observe it, then what have you been choosing to observe every single day? The physical proof of the oldest spiritual law. For thousands of years, great spiritual masters whispered a truth that seemed far beyond the comprehension of the average mind. A truth passed down in the Hermetic schools of ancient Egypt, in the Vedic teachings of India, and through the words of mystics, alchemists, shamans, and truth seekers throughout history. They said, all is mind. The universe is mental. Long before microscopes, particle accelerators, or any modern technology, they somehow knew that reality was not as solid as it appeared, that everything the eyes perceived as matter was in truth condensed energy, vibration, consciousness. For centuries, this truth remained hidden within esoteric circles, transmitted quietly from generation to generation, almost like a whisper beneath the noise of the material world. Most people lived, and still live, trapped in the sensory illusion, believing that the external world is fixed, that events are absolute, that life is a sequence of random happenings, disconnected from their own consciousness. But then, quantum physics arrived, and with it, a revelation capable of uniting what had always been kept apart, science and spirituality. The double-slit experiment isn't just an academic curiosity, it is the scientific confirmation of one of the oldest and most powerful spiritual laws, the law of mentalism. This law states that everything that exists in the universe originates first in the mind, that reality isn't external, it's a projection of consciousness. And now, with the direct observation of quantum phenomena, science itself has been forced to admit, matter is not the foundation of reality, it's an effect of observation, an effect of consciousness. What the experiment revealed, irrefutably, is that before anything becomes a particle, it is a wave. And what is a wave? A vibration, energy in a state of possibility. A wave isn't something concrete. It has no specific location in space. It exists spread out, distributed like a cloud of infinite probabilities, waiting, just waiting for an observer. The very moment consciousness looks, the wave collapses, and when it collapses, it becomes a particle. It becomes matter. It becomes reality. This means the universe at its core is not solid. It's not physical. It is vibrational. It is mental. It is consciousness expressing itself in different frequencies at different densities. And matter, the stuff you think is real, the stuff you can touch and hold, is nothing more than energy condensed by the effect of conscious observation. Think about the impact of this discovery. Everything you call life, your home, your body, your money, your relationships, your circumstances, is not a set of isolated, immutable facts. They are reflections. Perfect reflections of your frequency, your vibration, and most importantly, your observing consciousness. It's as if the entire universe is a blank canvas, and that canvas only starts to take on shapes, colors, and textures when you, and only you, direct your gaze, your attention, your focus. What you observe becomes real, and everything you don't observe simply remains in a state of pure potential. When the ancients said the universe is mental, they weren't speaking in metaphors. They were describing the invisible architecture of reality. They knew the mind doesn't exist inside the universe. It's the universe that exists inside the mind. The mind doesn't just observe the external world, it creates it. And now modern science, reluctantly but undeniably, confirms consciousness is not a byproduct of matter. It's the other way around. Matter is a byproduct of consciousness. And if that's true and quantum physics confirms that it is, then one question arises that no one can afford to ignore. If reality is shaped by your observation, your vibration, your consciousness, how would your life change if you finally chose to observe it differently? The hidden truth. There is a truth that few are ready to hear, but once it's understood, it simply can't be ignored. A truth that was hidden, not because someone purposely hid it, but because most people simply never knew how to look for it. A truth that completely changes the way you understand your life, your problems, your desires, your successes, your failures, and even what you call destiny. The universe is not something fixed. It's not something already made. It's not a solid structure waiting for you to discover it, like a pre-built stage where you're just a character going through random experiences. Number. At its purest essence, the universe is an invisible field, an infinite ocean of possibilities, a reality that exists as potential, as probability, as pure energy vibrating in different frequencies, waiting silently for you to look and decide which of those infinite possibilities will become real. And here's the key that few truly understand. Your reality isn't determined by what you want. It's determined by what you observe. Your consciousness collapses possibilities into facts, and what you choose to observe, whether consciously or unconsciously, becomes your experience. This means that what you call life isn't something that happens to you. It's something that happens through you. It's a constant dance between your attention, your vibration, and the quantum field around you. At every moment, with every thought, every emotion, and every interpretation of what you see, you are informing the universe what to collapse into your reality. And here lies the hidden truth no one ever told you. It's not the universe that decides what you experience. It's you. Through your gaze, through your perception, through the vibrational filter your consciousness projects onto the quantum field. The universe isn't something separate from you. It's not out there. It's inside you. It's interconnected, interwoven, entangled with your mind, your energy, your state of being. When you don't look, everything remains as a wave, pure potential. When you look, you choose, consciously or unconsciously, which possibility collapses. And that becomes your reality. This is more than physics. It's more than spirituality. It's the very mechanics of how reality is created. Precise, exact, flawless. And perhaps for the first time in your life, you're starting to understand why certain patterns keep repeating. Why certain problems, challenges, or limitations seem to show up again and again. Because unknowingly, you've been observing the same things, in the same way, holding the same frequencies, validating day after day the same version of your reality. You believe life is like this because it is like this. But in truth, it's like this because it's what you've been observing, confirming, and collapsing into the field. The field doesn't judge. The field doesn't interpret. The field doesn't question whether you want or don't want what you're observing. It simply responds. It observes your observation. And with mathematical perfection, it gives you exactly what you've been sustaining vibrationally in your field of perception. This is the hidden truth. Life is not a fact. Life is a constant choice, but not a choice made with random desires or disconnected wishes. It's a choice made through the way you look, through the vibration you hold, through the reality you validate inside yourself long before it appears on the outside. And with that, the most powerful question anyone can ask themselves emerges. If the universe is, right now, waiting for your gaze to decide what will become real, then what have you been choosing to observe? And if this awareness is starting to make sense inside you, if somehow this resonates, hit the like button on this video. That way, I'll know we're on the same frequency, vibrating in the same field, co-creating a new perception of reality together. How you're collapsing realities without realizing it. If there's one truth that can completely change the game of your life, it's this. You are collapsing realities all the time. Yes, every day, with every thought, every emotion, every interpretation of the world, you are, without realizing it, informing the quantum field which version of reality you want to make concrete. And here's the most intriguing part. Most people do this completely unconsciously. And maybe that's exactly why, even while seeking change, growth, and transformation, so many people feel stuck in endless cycles, as if life were trapped in an invisible loop, where the same problems repeat, the same limitations manifest, and the same challenges keep knocking at the door. It feels like no matter how hard they try, how much they wish, pray, or work, nothing really changes. The question is, why does this happen? Because the field doesn't respond to your conscious desires. It isn't listening only to what you say you want. It responds with absolute precision to what you observe, to what you feel, to what you validate with your vibration. And this is where most people get stuck. Without realizing it, they spend the entire day observing exactly what they don't want, focusing on the problem, on the lack, on the struggle, on fear, on resistance, on anxiety, and the field, which is neutral, which doesn't judge, which doesn't interpret, simply returns perfect. If that's what you're looking at, that's what you want to make real. It's like your mind is a lens, and that lens defines what, among infinite possibilities, you are focusing on. The problem is, most people live with their lens pointed exactly at what they don't want, looking at the negative bank balance, looking at the body they don't like, looking at the relationship that isn't flowing, looking at the fear of the future, and each time they focus, they validate. And each time they validate, they collapse. And each time they collapse, reality solidifies exactly at the frequency they were observing. And here's the paradox. You don't realize you are creating because you believe you are simply reacting to what already exists. But what exists only exists because you created it. The timeline you call my life isn't a fixed fact of the universe. It's a reflection of the quality of your observation. And if you keep looking at scarcity, the field understands. Okay, they want more of that. And it delivers more of that. Not because it's cruel, not because it's punishing you, but because this is the mechanics of reality creation. Pure quantum physics, pure vibration, pure consciousness manifesting itself. Now you understand why so many people, even after doing affirmations, visualizations, or spiritual practices, continue living the same problems. Because they do these practices with a desire on their lips, but with their vibrational gaze still focused on lack. They say, I want abundance, but spend the day staring at their debts. They say, I want health, but focus on the symptom, the fear, the pain. They say, I want love, but spend their days observing their loneliness. The field doesn't respond to what you say. It responds to what you observe vibrationally, energetically, emotionally. It responds to the internal state you sustain. And this is happening all the time, whether you know it or not, whether you want it or not, because this is the rule of the game of reality, and there is no way around it. And that's why, if you don't become aware of this mechanism, you'll keep collapsing the same realities. Day after day, week after week, year after year. And without realizing it, you'll continue saying that life is hard, that things are the way they are, that you're unlucky, that the world is cruel, without realizing that the one holding the lens, the one pointing it at what's manifesting, is you. So the big question is no longer whether or not you're creating your reality. That's a fact. The real question, the one that can set you free right now, is, from what place in your consciousness have you been looking at your life? Because it is exactly that gaze, that observation, that is collapsing everything you're living. The quantum technique. If you've understood up to this point that your life is not a reflection of what you desire, but of what you observe, then you already realize that the key to changing anything isn't out there, but at the center of your own consciousness. And this is exactly where true transformation begins. Because if it's your observation that collapses reality, then you can consciously choose to become a new observer. And that choice changes everything. The problem is that most people observe life from an automatic place, a place conditioned by years of beliefs, fears, traumas, and past experiences. They look without realizing from where they are looking, and without knowing it, they are observing life from lack, scarcity, doubt, and resistance. And the quantum field, which never makes mistakes, simply responds, "Perfect, this is what you wish to make real." And so, day after day, the same experiences repeat. But what if you could interrupt that cycle right now? What if you could learn to observe from a completely different place? A place where, instead of looking at what's missing, you look at the field of infinite possibilities that has always been available to you. Because it is. It always has been. It always will be. The only question is whether you perceive it or not. And this is where the quantum technique begins. It requires no physical effort, no forcing, no fighting. In fact, it demands the exact opposite: presence, awareness, and vibrational alignment. The first step is to interrupt the cycle of the old observer. This starts when you notice yourself looking at life through fear, worry, or doubt. That moment when you realize your mind is looping with thoughts like, "What if it goes wrong?" Or "This never changes," or "It's always like this." In that exact moment, you pause. You bring your awareness to the now, you breathe deeply, you relax your body, and you make a vibrational choice to leave the place of fear and step into the place of the conscious observer. It's not about running from the problem. It's not about pretending it doesn't exist. It's about understanding that the problem only becomes real when you continue looking at it as if it's the only possibility. Then you ask yourself, what if right now I choose to observe life not from lack, but from the abundance that already exists in the field? What if I stop seeing through the lens of scarcity and start seeing through the awareness that everything, absolutely everything, is already available, just waiting for my gaze to collapse it into reality? And when you do this, something starts to change. Your body relaxes, your frequency rises, you realize you are no longer the same observer as before. And in that instant, the field notices. Because the field always notices. It reads your vibration, it responds to the internal state you hold, and when the observer changes, the field starts reorganizing the possibilities. Synchronicities align, doors open, ideas emerge, the right people show up. Not because you forced it, but because you simply changed the point from which you were looking. This isn't a technique you do once and it's done. It's a constant choice, a vibrational practice, a daily alignment, because the external world won't stop offering you old triggers. Fear, doubt, scarcity, they will continue knocking. But now you know, they only become reality if you choose to observe through that lens. And when you realize this, something much greater is revealed. You were never a victim of reality. You've always been, and always will be, the coder of it. The one holding the lens, the one choosing where to focus, the one deciding which possibility collapses. And suddenly, what once seemed impossible, distant, unreachable, mysteriously starts becoming real. Because it was never about deserving, never about luck. It was always about frequency, about observation, about the internal place from which you are looking at life. And the quantum field, with its flawless precision, never misses. It observes the observer and responds exactly at the same frequency. The vibrational shift. There is a moment in the awakening journey where everything becomes absurdly clear. It's that instant when you viscerally realize that you were never trapped in the world. You were never blocked by life. You were never a hostage of circumstances. What was keeping you stuck, limited, blocked, wasn't the world. It was the old observer inside you, the unconscious lens through which you've been looking at life, and that, without knowing it, was collapsing the same realities over and over again. This isn't a metaphor. This isn't philosophy. This is pure vibrational physics. The invisible mechanics of reality operating with precision, perfection, and constancy. And it works whether you know it or not, whether you believe it or not, because the field doesn't sleep, the field doesn't pause, the field doesn't rest. It is constantly reading the frequency of the observer and perfectly reflecting it, without error, without exception, without judgment. And this is humanity's greatest imprisonment. It's not governments, it's not crises, it's not systems, it's not others. It's the observer itself, running on autopilot, operating through lenses built over years or even generations, based on fear, scarcity, doubt, and the unconscious sense of separation from the whole. The old observer believes that reality is fixed, that it's difficult, that it's limited, that things are how they are and there's little to be done except react. This observer wakes up every day and unknowingly, mentally and emotionally confirms that life is a struggle, that life is a problem, that nothing changes. And the field, perfectly accurate, responds, "Perfect. If that's what you choose to observe, that's what I'll collapse." But here's the truth. This observer didn't become this way out of malice nor ignorance. It was conditioned by experiences, by traumas, by the stories it heard, by the failures it accumulated, by the wounds it didn't know how to heal. And the more it looked at those wounds, the more it reinforced the belief that this was the only possible reality, until the lens became the prison, and the prison became life itself. But here's the shift, the key, the ultimate exit. You are not trapped in the world. You never were. You were only trapped inside the old observer. And that old observer is not you. It's merely a vibrational configuration of your consciousness, a program running in your energetic field. And now, in the exact moment you become aware of it, it starts losing power. Because awareness is power, attention is power. Consciousness is the code that rewrites reality. And when you truly understand this, there's no going back to the old way of being. Because the illusion collapses, you realize you are not the victim of reality. You are the coder of it, the artist, the architect, the observer who, at every moment, holds in their hands the brush that paints their own timeline. And something changes, deeply. You realize that life was never punishing you. It was never blocking you. It was simply mirroring you, reflecting, with mathematical perfection, the vibrational pattern of the observer you were being. When the observer changes, what is observed changes. When the frequency of your consciousness shifts, the field instantly reorganizes the possibilities. And what once seemed impossible, distant, unreachable, begins, mysteriously, to approach. Because it was never impossible, it was never far, it was always available in the field, simply waiting for you to look in the right direction. And now, knowing this, you carry a sacred responsibility. You can no longer pretend you don't know. You can no longer blame the world, others, the system, or fate. Now you know that the key has always been in your internal state, in the point from which you observe, in the vibration you sustain, because life doesn't respond to what you want. It responds with absolute precision to who you are being while you observe. We've reached the end of our journey, and now you carry a truth that can no longer be ignored. What you've seen here is not theory, it's not philosophy, it's not a pretty concept meant to motivate you. It's physics, it's vibration, it's spirituality in action. The reality you live is not a fact, it's a reflection, an exact mirror of your consciousness, your vibration, and the point from which you choose to observe life. And when the observer changes, everything changes, absolutely everything. So answer me, from today forward, what do you choose to observe? If you've made it this far, write in the comments, "I choose to be the new observer." That way I'll know you stayed until the end, that you allowed yourself to access this knowledge, and that you are ready to activate a new reality.